Now, we are just a few days away from the start of the Jackson Hole Economic Policy Symposium, which I'm told is without a doubt the most important monetary policy conference in the world.
Yes, the official theme of this year's gathering is...
What is the theme?
Drumroll, please.
Okay.
Financial innovation, implications for payments and policy.
Yeah, put that on a cake.
But what everyone is waiting for is the speech Fed Chair Kevin Warsh is scheduled to deliver on Friday at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. That is 8 o'clock Grand Tetons time. Tom Keene will be there, and he is back with us before he makes the pilgrimage to the Cowboy State. We're also joined this morning by Henrietta Treyz, who's the Director of Economic Policy at Veda Partners. Tom, let me start with you. You've been to this many years running now.
Way too many.
I don't want to say how many. How highly anticipated is this speech? I think it's a trope. We lean on it. Oh, the Fed chair is going to speak. The world will be listening. In this circumstance, is it different?
I would say in 25 years, there's been 3 or 4 times like this. Without question, I'll say the summer of '07, right after the 4 standard deviation move in LIBOR, that was I have a clear memory of Stanley Fischer glued to the phone, looking out at the Rocky Mountains, and there was some
trying to get service.
Real tension, real angst. It's a different tension this time, but it's a big deal.
Henrietta, what do investors, what do attendants want to hear? What makes this a success, especially given everything that's happened in the past week?
You know, the piece that I'm really interested in is obviously the combination of Warsh and how he is thinking about all the stuff that the Treasury Department is simultaneously doing. We basically are also getting, at the same time, 2 secret plans from Treasury Secretary Bessent to fight the war with Iran and also to fight the war that they have with the bond market. So it's a fascinating dynamic to see the interplay between Treasury and the Secretary there and Warsh at the Fed. So I think those two combined are amazing.
And Henrietta nails it in that we got to get to Friday.
Yeah.
This idea that we're going to saunter out there and have a wonderful time. I mean, Tracy Alloway and Joe Weisenthal
they'll have a wonderful time.
But the rest of us, it's this unknown of market data Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even opening Friday.
Henrietta, let me pick up on what you were saying there. So at the last press conference, the Fed chair said, when asked about this speech, he's looking at a blank piece of paper and picking up on what Tom said a moment ago. It sounds like it would be folly for him to start writing this now. Let's hope he hadn't drafted it before what happened last week.
That's true. That's a good point.
Difficult. How does he approach what's happened here over the last week? We were talking in the last hour with Tom and Tony Crescenzi just about the kind of historical roles of the Fed and the Treasury. This upends all of that, and I wonder sort of how you think he's approaching the speech that he's going to give on Friday.
I mean, I don't envy him. I feel a lot like when I try to prepare to go on Tom Keene's show on Monday mornings. You have to be ready 15 minutes before to see what has just happened. I think with regards to this specific week, the scale of what we're talking about is so expansive. So, for example, if the Treasury Secretary rolls out a plan that imposes massive sanctions on China, what is the reaction function? Are we now dealing with a situation where we're going to tariff China again? Are they going to retaliate by limiting critical minerals and rare earths coming back to the United States? That is a huge impact on our inflation numbers, which, of course, is the remit of the Fed. So there's, as you point out, no way his paper has any writing on it going into tomorrow, let alone Friday.
Tom, in the pantheon of economic symposium boondoggles, why is this one so important?
They're important. Francine Lacroix would tell you that Sintra in Portugal is just as well. Frankly, I think Sintra's more modern, more with it. The Kansas City Fed keeps a tight rope on the procedure here. There are a set of papers. Mike McKee is in the inner room past the 8-foot grizzly bear, and McKee is in the room with the other elite, and they're going through boring, sometimes brilliant academic papers. Sometimes there's a lot of yelling and screaming. And then there's a choreography where the global central bankers walk out and they do the beauty walk out to the split rail fence, and the American central banker goes, Wyoming. And, you know, they do that. There's a whole ballet.
Is this like a photo op? This is like the G20 photo op?
You'll be right there for that.
I think it was Powell. One time the speech was 9 minutes, 46 seconds. Right. John Farrow had a donut in his mouth. It was such a short speech. And, you know, you really never know all of this parade wrapped around the speech. I would suggest boring speech with maybe one single sentence, or he really steps up and writes what was perceived as a disastrous press conference.
How have you thought since that first press conference about Chair Warsh's approach to this job, particularly on the communications front? We can talk about the task forces and all of that, but he was very adamant in the way in which he wants to conduct himself, how the Fed should be conducting itself when it comes to communication. I imagine before this intervention, maybe that's what he would have dwelled on a little bit.
He's getting what he wants, frankly. He's getting much more of a, like, here's the markets, this is a stew, and then we'll act after the fact. So I think he's like halfway there. He's, like everyone else, including us, has been overcome by events. I mean, Henrietta knows it. I pulled an all-nighter, Christina, just trying to keep up with Carney and Trump on Canada. I mean, it's all moving in real time. It's the same for the chairman.
Henrietta, can we pull back from this a little bit? Because if you're not one of these cool people, you guys, who knows the ins and outs of these things and why they matter, if you're average American going to the polls in November, you may not be able to track the precise ins and outs of what's happening with the bond buybacks, with what Warsh is doing at the Fed, but you know what's happening at the pump. You know what's happening to your paycheck, and you see that there's this rattling around. You know something is going on. How does this filter down to average Americans? Do they care? Should they care?
It's a fascinating question, Christina. You know, there is actually historical polling trends that show us it's not necessarily the price of gasoline that is a huge problem for the American voter. I mean, we're at what, like $4.10 right now? That's obviously a steep curve. That's very expensive. So we're going to pick up on that. And the number one issue for voters right now is inflation by a country mile. But it's really actually the chaos that voters respond to. And you can see that backlash building right now. The president's approval rating is as low as 33% in the latest Reuters poll. The Republican conference is losing special elections nationwide from Tennessee to Virginia by double digits. And it's really this fluctuation in, oh my gosh, why are we intervening in the bond market? Why are we intervening in the yen? Why are we intervening in Iran? Why is the Strait still closed? It's the chaos of it all that is driving voters away from the Republican conference, and specifically the independent voter. The independent voter is defaulting towards Democrats. And not to bring too much into the table on this conversation, but you're seeing them at a pivotal time decide that Republicans are not presenting an opportunity for legislation or a policy that they support. And so that's having a ripple down effect to even how they feel about AI. How do you feel about data centers? And Democrats are winning that conversation because of, I would argue, a lot of the last 18 months of the Trump administration and what they've seen from the Republican conference. It's a really interesting moment in time to be asking voters to weigh in.
Tom, pick up on this, because so much of the agita in the bond market centers on the fact that we did surpass this $40 trillion threshold in U.S. debt.
Right.
Debt to GDP ratio not looking great. And to Henrietta's point, in a moment like that, customarily, you're not looking at the Treasury Department, you're looking up to Capitol Hill, you're looking for some sort of action here. And you know well how long this conversation has gone on over. There's hand-wringing about the U.S. fiscal house, and very little gets done.
It's in the very New Testament, the gospel according to Henrietta. Nobody votes on fiscal policy. We know that going back and back and back. Is this time different? And I'm hearing some conversations saying, you know what, 40 trillion's a round number, and this time may be different. I would focus much more on the gift of the stimulus-driven, AI-driven boom economy, which has said, okay, the deficit's where it is, the interest expense is where it is, but boy, it's a boom economy, great. And to me, the absolute hallmark here into the election is, does nominal GDP pull back? To me, that's the number one thing I'm watching.
And Henrietta, speaking of the Hill, we've got some breaking news from the New York Times reporting that the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has met with Democratic leader Representative Hakeem Jeffries to talk about ways they could possibly find common ground. That sounds like Republicans are planning to lose in November, but I'm wondering how you take that reporting if it is indeed factual.
Yeah, I bet they are meeting. There is a lot of risk specifically for the Trump administration. When I meet with Democratic leadership, one of the core obvious approaches that they're going to have. And, you know, my forecast is 90% odds that the Democrats take the House, but I still feel like Republicans have a better hand in the United States Senate. So you're not going to be in a position to pass legislation. They will have to address the debt ceiling, avoid a government shutdown. Those really sort of basic things that can nonetheless be economically catastrophic. But really, it's the investigation and oversight. And right now, the Democratic strategy is to go after not just Trump officials. You know, you can do Pete Hegseth or RFK Jr., Kristi Noem, or whomever. But there's also a tremendous amount of focus on the idea that there is a relationship between the Trump administration and private enterprise, whether that's Apple, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA. Why are you getting a special license to sell your chips to China? What's that about? Are you returning the tariff revenue to consumers, Walmart or Apple? Have you gotten a refund? And what are you doing with prices? So there's going to be this affordability lens. There's going to be a corruption lens. Why are these companies donating millions of dollars to a ballroom? What's going on there? There's a lot for the administration to be concerned about. And Kushner should be with Hakeem Jeffries right now.